ASP.NET Core introduces the rate limiter, which limits the number of requests that can be sent by a client within a specific time frame. The rate limiting features can be very useful, especially when you have a large user base calling your APIs. User can send multiple requests at different times, and these requests may be expensive, so limiting the number of requests a client can send per interval is crucial. There are different types of rate limiter in ASP.NET Core, which are the fixed window rate limiter. This is the most common rate limiter, which limits the number of requests that can be made within a specific time window. When the window expires, a new window is started and the limit is resetted. Number 2 is the sliding window rate limiter. That's a more advanced rate limiting strategy that is similar to the fixed window rate limiter, but it adds segments per window. The third, the token bucket limiter, similar to the sliding window rate limiter, which adds a fixed number of tokens on each replenishment period. Imagine having a bucket that contains a token. On each request, one token is removed, and when the token is finished, it is replenished, filled up again at every fixed interval. This is one of the very best rate limiters. The last, the concurrency rate limiter, that limits the number of concurrent requests. Unlike other rate limiters that use a time frame to limit the number of requests, the concurrency rate limiter reduces the number of requests by 1, and when the request is complete, the request is increased by 1. The benefits of using rate limiters are enhanced security, user experience, reliability, protection against abuse. Let's quickly implement this in the project in the Visual Studio in code. So as you can see on the screen in the program.cs, the add rate limiter is specified. So we are using a fixed window rate limiter. So to call it, you add the rate limiter, pass in the delegate, and call the add fixed window rate limiter. Have a policy name set to fixed and the options. So we have permit limit. So what this piece of code is simply specifying is we want to allow a number of requests per 30 seconds. So we are allowing a number of 2 requests that is set in the permit limit, 2 requests per 30 seconds. So window is the time frame for that request. So expecting 2 requests. Your client can only send 2 requests within 30 seconds before it is replenished. So we have the queue processing order that's set to oldest first, and the limit. That's the maximum cumulative permit count of queued acquisition requests. So you can also set the rejection. So when there are too many requests, we can return the unrejected behavior that writes to the browser or to the client that there are too many requests. So we also have to use the middleware by calling the use rate limiter. So this is the basic rate limiting, and we can also call this in the controller. In the controller, let's say for country, we can do enable rate limiting and we'll pass it the policy name fixed. So let's give this a try. So when a client executes this request, let's remove caching for now, response caching. The user will be allowed to execute this request to get the countries twice. The user have to do that two times within 30 seconds. So if the user executes more than two requests um, within 30 seconds, uh, you'll notice the behavior in the browser until it is being replenished and the user will be able to send another request. Now let's go to the browser and we visit the country endpoint directly. So I want you to pay close attention. Okay. Okay, now we have it. So remember, two requests per 30 seconds. So let's try to. Now you see it's taking time to load because we tried to execute more than two requests per 30 seconds. So this is going to wait till it is being replenished. So let's give it some time. Now we can execute two requests within 30 seconds. Other rate limiters are the sliding window limiter, as you can see on the screen. It's similar to the fixed window, but with segments per window. So the window slides one segment each segment interval. So we're still doing two requests per 30 seconds, but it will be segmented per window. Others are um, concurrency rate limiter. Um, the concurrency rate limiter limits the number of concurrent requests, like I said earlier. Um, Unlike other rate limiters that use a time frame to limit the number of requests, the concurrency rate limiter reduces the number of requests by one, and when the request is complete, the request is increased by one. So, so it does like replenishment automatically. Create a request. If a request comes in, it is being reduced by one, and when the request is completed, it is being replenished by one. So the code for that is listed here. So we have one request, we have permit limits. So you notice we did not specify the window because this concurrence limiter does it automatically. It does not use a window. That's the number of the time frame for the request. So it accepts one request, and when the request is complete, it increases the it replenishes by one automatically. The token bucket is one of my favorite rate limiters. Um, it uses the concept of tokens in a bucket. When a request comes in, a token is collected from the bucket and it auto replenishes after the replenish period. So for example, let's say we have 5 tokens in the bucket, and for each request 1 token is collected. If we send 5 requests, all the tokens are removed from the bucket, and you have to wait until the replenishment period for a token to be added back. So let's quickly do this in Visual Studio. So the first thing we need to set is the token limit. That is the maximum number of tokens that can be in the bucket at any time. Let's start with 5 tokens. And we set the replenishment period. So every 30 seconds, the token bucket is going to be replenished by 1 automatically. But we can also configure the tokens per period. So we can specify the maximum number of tokens to restore each replenishment. So let's start with 1. Modest. So this is all we need to use a token bucket rate limiter. So we have an endpoint test limit defined, and we just call the enable rate limiting and passing the policy name token. So let's give this a try. So let's work with it directly. So I have test limit. So I can run it 5 times. And now you can see it's delaying because we have exhausted the token and we have to wait for the replenishment period, which is 30 seconds. So after the replenishment period, 1 token is added back to the bucket. So let's wait for some time. Okay, so now we have 1 token added back to the bucket, and we can try this again. We can also specify increase the tokens per period. So after the replenishment period, we can restore 5 tokens back to the bucket. So let's try this. So 1, 2, 3, refresh again, refresh again. And now, as you can see, it's adding 5 tokens back to the bucket. So I hope you find this very interesting. It is very useful rate limiting, especially if you have expensive APIs. Um, you should try all the options out and also the token buckets, which is very useful. And whichever one works best for you, you should use it.